Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
Hello and welcome to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. I hope you are safe and well as you tune into the show this week. This week, we're going to be looking ahead to the solar eclipse on Wednesday with some tips on how to enjoy it and enjoy it safely. And a little bit later on, we're going to be talking with a representative from Vision Ireland about what it is that Vision Ireland do, but also some tips and tricks if you need to update the wardrobe and how to do it sustainably. And staying with the theme of clothing and dressing sustainably, we're joined by Pat Kane, once again, of Reuzi. And Pat is here to talk to us today because, Pat, there are new rules from the European Union, and it is in a bid to clamp down on all the waste in the fashion industry, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Thanks for having me once again, Aisling. Yeah, so from July this year, actually, large companies, the big ones, they were banned from destroying unsold clothing, accessories, and footwear under these new EU eco-design for sustainable products regulation. It's quite a mouthful, rule. So the idea is that, companies, they will need to find ways to ensure that unsold products are not just thrown to a pile and, set on fire. So it could be by, I suppose, going on sale. It could be by, I suppose, donating to charities and other ways. And of course, the idea behind it is to make sure that there are better planning, I suppose, processes in place. They ensure that, there's less waste overall. We know that between 4 and 9% of textiles placed on the EU market are destroyed before they are even or ever used. And that's between something like 260,000 plus, all the way to over a ton, over half a ton. 500,000 tons. I'm looking at the number in my mind every year. So it's a lot. It's really a lot.
And we don't think about that, do we? When we think about waste when it comes to fashion, we think about maybe the clothes we no longer wear, or we sometimes might have an idea of clothes being dumped on third world countries' shores. But we don't really understand how that all happens. And these new measures, the hope is that will reduce in the long term, that manufacturers will produce less so that there will be less waste.
That's exactly it. So it's what we always say, right? A piece of clothing, a garment, it doesn't suddenly become environmentally harmless because it didn't sell. If you think of the I suppose, life cycle of a garment, someone grew or extracted the raw materials from whatever, they used energy or water is supposed to manufacture it. They dyed it, they packaged, they transported it. So, if then nobody buys it quickly enough, we are destroying all of that embedded added value. And that's really crazy, really. So brands are supposed to look, as I said, at alternatives such as selling through discount, again, resale, donations, repairing, upcycling, reusing, finding ways to keep those products in circulation for as long as possible. Because again, it's the right thing to do. All we're looking really at the moment is for transparency. So they're trying to figure it out how much is going, like who are the biggest offenders? What is it that they are doing? And then trying to work with brands and make sure the brands are willing to work on that unsold stock. Obviously, there is fines behind it and whatnot. So what we're trying to do, and I was talking to someone else about that, is really work on the process behind the scenes to drive behavioral change for you and I end consumers. These regulation is not coming in to educate you and I, end consumers. It's really coming in at the source to ensure the companies are trying harder to do the right thing.
And we've seen it even tackled in drama, whereby you might have a fictional high-end fashion design house where they might let's for argument's sake say they make handbags, and they'll have product testing. They might they'll have multiple iterations in the design process, and that happens with anything that you're making. You go through different versions, but then those elements that could be a very usable handbag, but maybe don't meet the standard of that, how that brand wants to be seen, they'll be maybe the leather will be slashed, or they'll be destroyed in some way to make them unusable if they were to fall into, in inverted commas, the wrong hands.
Yeah. So you're talking about sample products, for example, right? Prototypes. So that's a very gray area, I suppose, because the regulation, it's very careful because it talks about unsold products. So unsold products that are products that are made to be sold. So a sample, a prototype, it's never really intended for sale. So it's automatically not, I suppose, categorized as an unsold product, right? So a prototype there, I suppose, would be, again, a complicated area because brands could say, oh, but all of these is sample. All of these, we're not looking here at real products. So the EU, as I said, what they're going to try and do is really to get brands to disclose information on unsold products, a bit more transparency on what the definition is for each company of these big ones. But again, when it comes to samples, it's where it gets interesting, I guess. And, it's almost like a wait and see at this stage.
And I know you're saying this is for, say, the big retailers, the big fashion houses. Do we have guidelines of what kind of companies considered to fall into this remit at the moment?
Yeah, you're talking about the big groups, you're talking about the big, conglomerates, the really big ones. So if you were to look into medium-sized companies, the rule will come in as well. By 2030, they have to comply. And then small businesses are excluded, currently anyways. The micro and the small businesses, they are currently exempt. But when we talk about large business, we're talking about, and I won't say names, but you could come up with them yourselves, high street fashion and that kind of thing, the big ones.
As things stand, this came in July, so now it's officially, you should be adhering to it if you're working for one of these retailers and you're listening to the programme. But what's the response been? Have we seen much from the industry itself? Because this is... They've had fair warning. They knew this was coming.
Yeah, it's a funny one because what I'm getting, I wrote a piece there recently for print media, and what I was getting was a lot around the consumer side of things. A lot of people are like, look, yeah, sounds great, but there was a pretty heavy dose, I suppose, of skepticism. And I think that's interesting considering, it is, in theory, a very positive thing. So it's obviously very early days, but I feel like, the feedback so far has been split into finally, a lot of people like, oh, that's great. They should have happened so many years ago. The emotional response that you always get when something like that comes out. I find it anyways. I suppose there's also a little group or another group talking about, yeah, it's a great idea, but it's really not going to fix the problem, so you can't destroy clothes in the EU. So what if I ship them abroad? That is a very good question, and donations don't make the overproduction automatically sustainable. We have to think of that as well. Ideally, companies would become a bit smarter and plan better for overproduction so they don't have to deal with the consequences of that overproduction. But that happens, and it is what it is, at least for now. But it's important to say, okay, And that group, that second group, as I say, it's questioning really, great, you're just moving the problem from one hand to another. Because if he hasn't sold while it was in stock, why is he going to sell at a charity shop? Or why are we shipping it abroad so it's someone else's problem? And that's a very valid argument as well. And then there's another group, I suppose, when it comes to the luxury groups or the larger fashion groups, as I was talking about, that are probably thinking, this is going to be very painful for fashion businesses. I read something on the Financial Times there that groups like, again, without mentioning names, but throwing a few out there, your Inditex, your LVMH, the big ones, they're obviously facing the new rules and they have to rethink about, their excess inventory, as I said, the overproduction, and brand positioning. And because the reality is actually some really famous brands, very high-end brands, they destroy stock simply because they don't want to decrease their brand value and put products on for sale, which is shocking. Imagine stuff that people are paying 5,000-10,000 euro for a handbag, suddenly is being slashed because they don't want to do something about it. It's insane. So effectively, I suppose the regulation is going to make overproduction more expensive for brands. They're going to have to deal with that. We made too much consequence. There are brands out there that have on their website, there's a very well-known activewear brand, very well-known. On their website, if you go to their menu, there's one section called "We Made Too Much." So, grand, in that case, they are addressing that through sales to, cheaper pricing. But stop with that, folks. Let's just rethink your model. So yeah, again, there are people who are very positive. Most of the people involved in the big businesses, they're probably not very positive and happy about it. But again, the jury is still out. I think any progress is progress at this stage. The worst thing for us would be to just stay still and just see what happens, because that really doesn't help anybody.
Now, look, and regardless, dealing with waste is costing these companies money. Now, they might argue that it's negligible cost and it doesn't cause them much stress. You mentioned fines and consequences. What kind of teeth does this legislation have? Will that encourage change? The fear of being caught out?
I think the fear of fines is small, and having come from the corporate world, I suppose industries that were heavily fined for different reasons. I feel like it's always painful for the business, but they know they can make the money back again. I don't think fines will fix the problem. I'd like to see bans. I'd like to see shutdown. I'd like to see real damage reputation-wise, and that's not me being negative, but it's just being very realistic, and this capitalist model, it's very rare that a fine, a little slap on the hand, a few dozen thousand euro, whatever it is, that really doesn't move the dial. So again, still, the jury is still out, but I would like to see something bigger and stronger there. Again, we'll see.
I'm thinking as you're talking about the revenue tax defaulters list, no one wants to get their name, their brand, their company. No one wants to be on that list. That's serious reputational damage. So perhaps the EU needs to create an equivalent, some sort of something that will cause, actually, do you know what? We don't want to end up in that pot of companies. Yeah. We need to change how we're doing things.
But even the ones that are publicly listed, if you think of them, whenever there's a scandal like that, the first thing I do is I look at their stocks to see if there was anything at all in there, like any impact. And it's rare to see something like this, because when it comes to fines, the market is confident. That's it won't make a dent. Carry on. So, it needs, as you said, to be something that will really make a dent. And it's oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
Again, a 10,000, even 100,000 euro fine for some of these businesses, fine. They can take it.
Well, Pat Kane of Reuzi, thanks as always for joining us on Let's Go Green and bringing us up to date on those new rules for the large conglomerates in the fashion space. After the break, we're going to be joined by Ciara Coleman of Vision Ireland. We'll be back in 2.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103, and I'm joined now by Ciara Coleman, and Ciara is Head of Business Development and Growth with Vision Ireland. Ciara, you are very welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having me, Aisling. Nice to chat to you.
Now, Ciara, like Vision Ireland, it used to be NCBI. You've rebranded in recent years, but you've been around a really, really long time. Talk to me about the work that you do.
Yeah, so I suppose our purpose and mission is to raise funds for the blind and visually impaired in terms of the retail structure. So from a store perspective, on the retail side, we have 124 stores across Ireland and Northern Ireland. We have 4 stores in the north. And yeah, we're obviously spread really, I suppose, across every county in Ireland. There's not many counties where you can't find a Vision Ireland store. From a fashion perspective, we really, I suppose our main purpose is to take in donations from people, and that can be anything obviously from customers who donate into store, but also on a wider perspective, we partner with many corporate retailers, bigger organisations that would have end-of-line donations that they would give to us, and then we would repurpose those out through our store network or indeed through events and pop-up activity that we do, which is in addition to the standard bricks and mortar stores that you would see across the country. We also have an online platform as well. We sell across different marketplaces, so eBay, Vestiaire, Vinted, Depop are our main ones. So we have quite a large network in terms of, I suppose, our footprint.
Ciara, I've been working in media now. I was thinking about it at the weekend since 2004, on or off, right? Since I started studying it and working in it. And I'd say in the past 5 years or so, I think we're getting in Ireland, we're catching up with the rest of the world in that we're really enjoying, as the Americans call it, thrift shopping or charity shopping.
Yes.
And we're really getting in on it. I was only out for lunch at the weekend there, and I overheard a conversation where a lady said, my entire wardrobe is vintage these days. I don't need to buy new. And in an environmental context, it's wonderful to see. And
100%.
So I'm taking it that you're seeing that in your own shops, and there's more interest in what you're doing and what you're selling, that, the deals that people can get.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, you've hit the nail on the head. I suppose definitely we were, I suppose from an Irish point of view, we were definitely behind the curve in terms of the thrifting trend. But I would say in the last, really 2 to 3 years, that's really ramped up, and it's really just not fashionable anymore in the same way to buy new. And I think, when you look at things like rental, etc., obviously pre-loved fashion, thrifting, as you say, is another word to use for it. It's very much being, I suppose, publicised as the new way forward in terms of the industry, and it's which is fantastic to see. And I think it's about time that Ireland has, I suppose, upped its game in terms of the awareness level about how we have a role to play in terms of that education as well. Just even for the younger generation that are coming through, they are no longer as interested in going out and doing kind of these big hauls in terms of like fast fashion that you would have seen maybe a number of years ago. So that's just no longer seen as okay. I think even when you look at things like award ceremonies, from a very, I suppose, high level media point of view, generally influencers, celebrities, etc., are now talking about, well, I've rented something, or I've borrowed it, or I've, reworked a piece in my wardrobe. I've maybe upcycled a piece that I already had. And I think that's fantastic, to see that. I've really noticed it over the last 18 months. If you look at like the VIP awards and things like that, really people don't talk about, well, I bought this new. It's generally something that's either been repurposed repurposed, rented, or they've I suppose worn something a second or third time in their wardrobe, which is fabulous to see.
And it's the story behind it. Like earlier on this year, I had a lovely wedding. I was very lucky to be invited to a lovely wedding, and I had I got this nice idea in my head. My Deb's dress has been in my mother's wardrobe since I did my Deb's when I was 18.
Yeah.
What am I doing? This is just taking up space. And I found a lovely dressmaker who was able to rework the entire outfit for me. And now I'm only looking for an excuse to wear it again because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
So is there, and I'm wondering here, because I know I did the clear out a number of years ago, maybe ball gowns for weddings or events that just don't fit anymore. I don't feel comfortable anymore. And it was pre-Vinted days. So I went to my local charity shop. Is there a challenge there? Because I now know, well, if that's good quality, I might be able to get money for it as opposed to donating it to the likes of Vision Ireland.
100%. I mean, I think, the reality is that Vinted coming into Ireland over the last, I suppose 12 months we've definitely seen a drop off in terms of a certain level of donations that we'd received through stores. So I think there's a particular age demographic as well that are, very much kind of avid, Vinted sellers. But I do think as well, I suppose for us, the benefit has been obviously the new legislation that's just come into effect, where retailers are no longer allowed to dispose of, their end of line product. They have to find a channel to redistribute that product in an ethical and a responsible way. So we're probably seeing, I suppose, a drop off in terms of local donations from customers, but we are seeing a huge rise in corporate partnerships and those large scale retailers that are willing to work with us now, which maybe weren't educated themselves a number of years ago on how to responsibly dispose of that surplus stock and give it a second life. It's a balancing act. But Vinted has definitely been an interesting one for us to watch. And I think it's also played a part in that education, I suppose, for consumers on, thrifting as well. So it's all played a part in the wider scheme of things.
But look, as far as I'm concerned, nothing beats going in and having a rummage, whether it's in a clothes shop because I love my style, or I also love interior design, and I love buying vintage furniture, and the story behind it.
Yes.
So it's just, at least when you're buying it from a shop in person, it's a real thing. And because I have seen, and I'm not going to name any names, but I have seen some people order from secondhand online retailers and receive, an empty envelope because it's, people run, there are, like with anything in life, there's always someone who ruins it for everybody else.
Absolutely, an opportunist. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So can you give us some tips? Because sometimes, and I know Vision Ireland in particular, you've in your rebrand in recent years, the shops are fabulous, but sometimes you can go into a charity shop or a thrift shop or whatever name you prefer to give them and feel a little bit overwhelmed. So give us some tips for finding some gems.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything, when you're going out and you're planning a shopping trip, it's to be really clear about what it is you're looking for. So obviously there's always the thrill of the find. If you're looking for, say, maybe a designer item that's, at a great bargain price, that can be one of the things that's on top of your list. But I think knowing what's in your wardrobe and obviously being clear about what you want to add to it, and maybe not just going in, I suppose from our point of view as well, we want people to responsibly shop, especially even when you're thrifting, and even if it's a bargain, it's to know how does this fit in with the rest of my wardrobe. Am I going to team it with other pieces that I will definitely be able to get several uses out of, so that it doesn't end up at the back of the wardrobe and then you're regretting your purchase. So I think it's just being very clear about what you're looking for before you go in, because I do think otherwise you can, to your point, feel overwhelmed when you go into a charity store in particular. Sometimes our stores are, I suppose, quite unique in that we merchandise them in a very similar way to you would find any high street retailer, and we do it the same way in terms of seasonality, like spring, summer, autumn, winter, and our product would reflect that seasonality as well. So it should be very easy for consumers to shop in. But there are obviously lots of charity retailers out there, and that's not always the case. So you can come in and feel a little bit like, oh my God, where do I look, or how do I start? So I think planning your shopping trip is really important part of that.
And it is about being willing to get in and rummage, isn't it? Now, look, I'm someone, Ciara, I have a colour palette that I genuinely love and enjoy. So I go in and that's one thing I will say, in fairness to yourselves and Vision Ireland, I go into a shop and I see the pink or teal section and I know to walk straight and I go rummaging. Whereas if it's autumnal colours, that's just not me. So it is about being willing to go in and have a look and to think about, at the end of the day, this is, you know, you might be spending maybe €20, but it's going to a good cause as opposed to an anonymous giant.
100%. Yeah.
Now, I know we're still in the summer. We have a couple of weeks left. We've got Electric Picnic, the big festival in the Midlands coming up. We have a lot of people who are very interested in, say, ladies' race days, and you know, it's all very fashion centric at this time of year.
Absolutely.
And that's where we'll also find Vision Ireland at the heart of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think we've really, I suppose, grown our presence across, you know, festival season in particular, but also the racing season as well has become really, really important for us as a category. So, for example, this week we are in Galway. We're at the Galway races. Earlier, just before the summer, we were in Punchestown, kind of kicked off the season for us. And then we are literally just about to go live with All Together Now from tomorrow. So first time for us to be present at All Together Now. So we're super excited about that. An Electric Picnic we've done now for a number of years. So we are, once we come out of All Together Now, we will be heading down, back down to Stradbally at the end of the summer. So yeah, really, really important moment for us this year.
Why go to these festival venues? Because I'm guessing, like, logistically, it's going to cost money. It's going to cost an awful lot of effort. So what's the benefit to Vision Ireland to being at these events?
I suppose there's several, really. It's a great opportunity for us in terms of how we collaborate and we partner with the likes of Festival Republic, who we work with for Electric Picnic. We have different strands to our relationship with them, so we also offer back a service to them in terms of volunteering. So we look after the accessibility side of things, lost and found, etc. So that's one strand to the relationship. The other piece obviously is where we provide a pop-up store with very appropriate, I suppose, products that you would buy at a festival. So, you know, from a commercial point of view, it is very beneficial for us, and we raise a lot of vital funds that go back into our charity. So we often refer to the summer season as almost like our Christmas period. It's become that crucial and that pivotal for us in terms of a moment in the calendar.
Now, I have to ask a cheeky question. There is a perception that you might find, say, better items in an area that stereotypically would be considered to be a bit more well-to-do. Would that be, if you were looking for some real gems now, would that be accurate, do you think, Ciara?
I think it really depends. I think, I suppose within certain where we would have stores in certain locations, you can be luckier. It depends on, I suppose, the demographic within that location. So you may get more designer items donated, absolutely. But it's not, you would also be surprised at where we do see designer items as well in certain stores. So I've been definitely educated since I've started, especially like across the Midlands and, you know, in the country, where you would, I suppose, generally expect more Dublin-centric stores to have a lot more of those kind of gems, but that's not always the case. So I think it's luck of the draw, to be honest. But yeah, it just depends.
It's going in.
But it's a fair assumption, I understand. Yeah.
And look, we enjoy having a bit of crack here on the show. So
100%. Yeah.
But Ciara, like you say, if you're going near any charity, any thrift store, as the Americans call it, whether it's fashion or interiors or furniture, what have you, it is important to have an idea in your head beforehand as to what you're looking for and what your budget is.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would always say that. I think it's part of our role, I suppose, in terms of that education piece back to people in terms of the sustainability side of things. We don't want to be feeding overconsumption. So that's not our whole purpose is around, giving clothes a second chance, a second life. And it's important that people are, I suppose, considered when they're adding things to their wardrobe.
And at the end of the day, it's not sustainable if we can't afford it, and it's going to cause stress at the end of the day, because that's
100%.
we don't want that at all. Well, listen, Ciara Coleman of Vision Ireland, thank you so much for joining us on this week's Let's Go Green. Ciara, I know you mentioned a couple of your online outlets. Where's the best place for people to find out more about Vision Ireland if they want to look you up?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we have platforms in terms of our website, so visionIreland.ie, but also you can find us on social media, Instagram, Facebook and TikTok. And there's a lot of information there in terms of, where we sell, obviously stores, but also online. So we do have eBay, Vinted, Vestiaire and Depop, where you can purchase online as well as our stores.
Well, Ciara Coleman, thank you for joining us today. We will be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
Listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103, and I hope you're enjoying our show so far this week. I am joined now by Herman Le Roux of the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies. Herman, you are very welcome to Let's Go Green.
Thank you so much for the welcome, Aisling, and thank you to all the listeners. I hope you're doing very well. It's a great pleasure to be here today.
So, Herman, before we get into the solar eclipse that's happening on Wednesday, tell me a little bit about DIAS. What exactly is it that you do?
So DIAS is a research institute for quite a few different fields of study. We have a geophysics group, an astrophysics school. We also have a Celtic studies school and also a theoretical physics school. So we actually cover quite a broad range of things. And each one of these schools are research institutes. So they're primarily research professors, postdoctoral candidates, and also PhD students who are mostly working on postgraduate studies and trying to push the frontiers.
Fantastic. And as part of this, astronomy comes into this, and like the solar eclipse on Wednesday, like I remember in my childhood, there's been huge excitement around a solar eclipse. So it's something that we all get a little bit of a kick out of. The child in us gets a bit of a kick out of it, sure. I think. But what exactly is a solar eclipse?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. There's a lot of mystery about it, and I think there's something a little bit magical about it because it just is so cool. Yeah. So a solar eclipse is when the path of the moon moves in between us and the sun, and its shadow is cast onto a certain part of the surface of the Earth. Now, we don't necessarily always get total solar eclipses. We get partial solar eclipses as well, and it happens about once every 18 months. But the degree of which we get coverage or the shadow that's being cast is quite rare. And the reason why there is a shadow to begin with is very coincidentally, the distance between the sun and the Earth is about 400 times that of the distance between the moon and the Earth. And similarly, the size of the sun is about 400 times bigger than that of the moon. So it is all a big coincidence, as you can imagine, that we have this amazing celestial event that can happen, that casts these shadows onto us.
It is. And it is kind of amazing that it's still a bit of a mystery as well.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Even with all the studies and everything into it. So talk to me about Wednesday. What exactly can we expect to see?
So on Wednesday at around 6 p.m., the onset of the eclipse will start. So you'll start seeing a little bit of a circular shaped shadow coming across in front of the sun. It may depend on where exactly you are in Ireland. If you go to eclipse26.ie, you can see exactly where yours a start time or onset time will exactly be. And within an hour, it will reach the maximum of the eclipse. Now, in Ireland, that will range from about 92% to about 98%, depending on where exactly you are. 98 if you're going as far as Skibbereen or Dingle or these kinds of places. And then the eclipse will end at around, I think, 10 past 8. So you can expect the peak to be around 10 past 7, depending exactly. It can vary a few minutes depending on where in Ireland you are. And that's the kind of partial eclipse that will come over Ireland itself. But amazingly, luckily for us and for Ireland, a few colleagues of mine will be on an Irish Air Corps C-29 flight. Flying about 300 kilometers off the west coast of Ireland into the path of totality, as they call it, or where the total solar eclipse will be.
Wow, that's going to be something special, I'd imagine.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's a lot of preparation that has been going into this, and there's quite a bit of science that you can do with it as well. They have been preparing instruments to essentially take a telescope with them onto this flight, and at 10,000 feet, they were going to open a window, point this telescope at the sun and at the moon, essentially, and trying to get some observations of the outer atmospheric layers of the sun, called the corona.
And why do that? Why, to the lay person like myself, yeah. I think it's something really special. It's a moment to maybe, a few mindful moments to take a breath of fresh air and to go out and observe it. But why scientifically is it still something that's, well, not only fascinating to scientists, but is still studied?
That is absolutely my favorite question to answer to people, because it is something that is just really mind-blowing. So the visible surface of the sun as we can see it, or this yellow bright star that we have, a white light star, depending on who you ask, the visible surface has a surface temperature of about 5,500 degrees Celsius. Now, as far as the sun goes, that doesn't sound too crazy, 5,500 degrees Celsius. But on these outer atmospheric layers, the temperature rises to about 2 million degrees Celsius. Now, if you were to think, you're making your campfire wherever you are, and the first 2 or 3 steps you take from the fire is getting hotter. Now, how can that possibly be? And this is exactly the issue that we have. We have this thing called the coronal heating problem, where for the first few bits of it, when you're moving away from the sun, it's actually getting hotter. It's not getting cooler as you think it would. And then obviously after a while, it does start cooling off, but that's only when you get much farther away from the sun. So there's this outer atmospheric layer of the sun where there's something happening that we really need to understand. How is it happening, or why is it happening? Because it can really help develop our ideas for what kind of activity is happening on the sun and how it's affecting us.
And do we know is there any, and this might be out of your area of expertise, but a connection to climate change, or this has been studied for such a long time. So as part of all of this, do you look at things like that?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly what kind of the things that, or part of the research that we do here in our astrophysics school, we have a research group called the Solar Physics and Space Weather Research Group. And in our research group, we study the whole range of effects from the solar activity that's occurring on our closest star all the way down to the effects that we have here on Earth. Now, with relation to climate change specifically, I wouldn't necessarily say there is really an impact. If any, it's very, very minimal. Not anything that I think would be worth mentioning, but it does have a lot of technological impacts on us, because there's a lot of activity on the sun, and we have a lot of satellites these days. A technosphere, there's a lot of things booming, and the sun can have quite a lot of effects on these kinds of things. So it's very important for us to understand the activity that is going on. And it wouldn't be possible without the equipment that is just worth mentioning. The telescope that my colleagues are taking with them, this is Professor Peter Gallagher from the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies and Assistant Professor Laura Hayes. They are taking a telescope built from spare parts from ESA satellites that are going to be built up from that, and they're going to take these pictures with that instrument, along with their colleagues from the Italian National Institute for Astrophysics, Gerardo Capobianco and Lucia Abbo. So it's really an amazing international collaboration as well.
And this is a particularly special event because we're not going to get an eclipse like this again until 2090.
Exactly, yeah. So you're exactly right. There are these small eclipses that always happen around, but this kind of total eclipse for Ireland specifically, it is quite a rare event in general anyway. And I think it's a really, really amazing opportunity for people to get out and go look at a bit. Obviously, don't look at the sun.
Now, I was just about to ask you about that one, Herman. You segued nicely onto my next question. So we do have to be careful. We can't just go out on Wednesday evening and just look up at the sky. We have to take some level of precautions. So what might we make, or what can we do between now and then to get ready?
Now, there are a few tutorials online, I would say, as well, for how you can make safe viewing equipment. We have an Instagram account called Dias Done Sync, where we did put up a tutorial for how people can make safe viewing equipment. If you don't have certified solar eclipse viewing glasses, I would tend to be very careful about looking at the sun, especially through binoculars and these kinds of things. They can really cause permanent eye damage. So definitely, if you don't have these kinds of solar eclipse glasses, there might be some that you can find online that are of good quality standard. We are a research institute, so we don't sell them, unfortunately. But there are some things that you can do to make a nice viewer for yourself at home with some cereal boxes and duct tape and things that you can have around.
And would this be an activity that kids might get involved in?
Yeah, they would love it. I think this is a great opportunity for kids to get involved with it as well. If you have a cereal box and you have some tinfoil and duct tape, it can go a long way.
Okay, so we need a cereal box. So get eating, finish up that cereal box, a bit of tinfoil and a bit of duct tape, and we can follow the video along on your Instagram and make a safe viewing surface for ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And when we use one of these, what will we see, or how do we see it then?
So essentially, the tutorial online, it shows you how the light of the sun is going to come in through some holes and it will project back onto some surface. So instead of having to look directly at the sun, you will basically be looking at a projection of what it is looking like in whatever you choose to make it with. And hopefully, if you're really lucky, what you're able to see, I think unfortunately with partial solar eclipses, the light that it's so blinding and it's so bright from the solar surface that it will blind most of it. But if you're really lucky, you might be able to see things called coronal loops just at the edges. So these very small, almost semicircles or these kinds of things just around the edges of the sun. They call them prominences in the sciences, but they just look like these little loops.
And just to reiterate for listeners' benefit, because it's been a while since we've experienced something like this in Ireland, you can actually do damage to your eyesight if you don't do this carefully. Yeah.
Now, if you don't, I would definitely encourage listeners to take great caution when looking at the sun, because this event could cause serious and permanent eye damage if you don't take the necessary precautions. There is also on the eclipse26.ie website that we have a good tutorial and guide on how to do a safe viewing experience, and also a very nice map of Ireland to get an idea of where your eclipse will be peaking at what time and your specific location, should you want to make sure of the details.
Should we, Herman, go maybe we're in the Midlands, so out onto a bog or out into the countryside? And I know, I'm thinking at this time of day, it's going to be usually it's bright enough anyway, but light pollution, do we have to worry about anything like that as far as affecting the experience of the eclipse?
I think a scenic view is always beautiful, because remember, this is going to be around sunset as well. So I think if you're going out, I would definitely recommend it. Going a bit out west if you can, it will definitely help your chances getting a bit more of this of the coverage of the solar eclipse. And I think something that's also worth mentioning is it coincides very coincidentally with a very large meteor shower that's also on Wednesday evening. And this meteor shower, if you're in a low light pollution kind of area, you can get around 40 meteors coming overhead about per hour or maybe so it won't hit the earth or anything. It's just shooting stars almost about 40 an hour.
Something particularly special as we unfortunately wind down the summer, but a nice way to be winding down the summer.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, Herman Le Roux of the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies, thanks so much for joining us and taking us through our solar eclipse here on Let's Go Green.
Thank you so much for your time, Aisling. I hope all of you have a lovely evening, and please enjoy the eclipse to its fullest.
We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. Now, I wanted to give you some information for your diary, because National Heritage Week kicks off on this coming Saturday. It is the week where there are events taking place right across the country, encouraging all of us to get involved in heritage, to find out more about places and people involved in heritage within our own localities. And that's what makes it well, it's a really nice event. They're all free and they're all available on heritageweek.ie. You can even find on the website a map and put in your location or the dates, or maybe filtered by category depending on what you're looking for. So in Offaly, for example, there is an event called Drop the Needle and Reminisce. There is another one in the library as well, Create Your Own Farming and Cobble Street Village Scenes. There's so much happening across the county of Offaly and indeed across the Midlands. So let me go to Westmeath now and see what else is happening in the Midlands. So I have the map up here in front of me, and looking through all the amazing events, there is story sharing at St. Bridget's Holy Well in Clare, and Anna Brown of Let's Go Green fame, Anna Brown, is hosting Follow the Buzz, Jack's Stop Streamstown. And that's the stop there on the old rail trail Greenway. And Westmeath Heritage Office is hosting Nature Through Art, an exhibition by Lily Bernard as well. And let me hop over now to County Laois and look at what's happening there for Heritage Week of 2026. There is an event in Portlaoise Library, Reimagining Portlaoise, Music, Memory and Meaning. There's also a film screening of Tá Ucras Urim that's being put on by Laois County Council, and it's taking place in the Dunamaze Arts Centre. And in Abbey Leaks, there is a Heritage House Talks, and this one is Abbey Leaks, the Planned Town, that is being organised by Abbey Leaks and District Historical Society. There's far too many events taking place across the Midlands for me to mention all of them, but I wanted to give you just a taste of some of them. There's also one that looks really interesting. It's going to be taking place in Mount Rath Library, and that is an OM alphabet tree workshop for children. Now that does look really nice and something that might be of interest. I know OM was something that really fascinated me as a child, and something I've completely lost any knowledge I ever had of it. So I'm sure that'll be a fun event. Now look, all of these events are taking place across the country, but indeed our focus is of course the three Midlands counties of Laois, Offaly and Westmeath, from the 15th, so this coming Saturday, to the following Saturday, the 23rd of August. Freely available. Some do involve booking tickets, so it's worth your while to go on to heritageweek.ie. Then from there you can go to their events map and see if anything piques your fancy. I mean, we are in the latter days of the summer, so it's nice to get out and about and enjoy it while we still can. And of course, just a reminder and a thank you to all the contributors to this week's show here on Midlands 103. Vision Ireland is the place to go to find out about all Vision Ireland's work and the shops that they, both furniture and clothing shops that they have. And of course, their online options, whether it's eBay or over on Instagram. They all, that whole, if you go to visionireland.ie, it's, you know, everything about them is there and there for you to enjoy and find out more about. I love a good rummage in a second-hand shop, particularly furniture has been my go-to over the last year or two or three or four. I've really gotten into the whole mid-century modern thing in recent years as I refurbished my home. Have to stop that now though, because it's done. So, you know, we can't keep going back. But I have gotten some really, really lovely pieces in second-hand furniture shops over the last couple of years that I will have for many, many years. And of course, we have our solar eclipse coming up on Wednesday evening. Now, make sure that if you're enjoying the solar eclipse, and I know, look, it'll be an amazing thing to take part in. I'm looking forward to it myself. But we do have to do it safely. If you do not have the approved solar glasses, then please do not look at it, because you can do very serious damage to your eyes. And our eyesight is something, as far as I'm concerned, that's absolutely worth protecting, particularly if there are young people involved. And as Herman said, if we go over to the DIAS Instagram account, that's DIAS, the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies, they do have a full tutorial on how to make a safe viewing device for the solar eclipse. So you can do that between now and Wednesday evening if you're so inclined. I hope you enjoyed our show this week and every week. And please don't forget that you can catch up on any episode that you may have missed. Go to midlands103.com and select the podcast page, or just go to your preferred podcast app and search for Let's Go Green with Aisling O'Rourke. That is all I have time for on this week's show. But once again, just to say, I love hearing from you guys, the listeners. So please do keep those emails coming. And I love hearing suggestions as to what we should or could be covering here in the show. hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie. Take care, stay safe, and slán go fóill. I'll be back next week.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.